on CityCast Nashville, we are diving into this year's Tennessee General Assembly and the bills moving through the state legislature this session. Chaplain Darren Annalise Johnson, co-chair of the Tennessee Equality Project's Davidson County Committee, joins us to talk about legislation affecting our LGBTQ+ neighbors and proposals targeting immigrant communities and the common thread that connects them. It's Monday, March 9th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Darren, what's the biggest theme you see amidst all the legislation the Tennessee General Assembly is pushing this year? Are there any common threads?
Sadly, the most common thread, as it has been for a number of sessions, is the ways that this supermajority legislature continues to try to divide, to other, to vilify, to monstrify so many different communities away from each other, so that you're left with this very small and select and, dare I say, specific group of folks. But when you are going after folks who need to make reproductive health care choices for themselves, and when you go after every community in the LGBTQIA plus community of communities, and you not only try to divide them away and push them out of the public sphere, but then you try to divide even allied communities away from each other. And then when you monstrify and you vilify our immigrant, asylum seeker, refugee neighbors, and you divide them from each other, and you point the finger at them, and you say, these are the monsters that we need to remove from among us. And you can't prove to me otherwise that the legislation that is being pushed at our state level, through the types of folks at the federal level, that isn't the end goal, that isn't the project of what all of this legislation is meant to do. Divide, 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 discriminate, discriminate, discriminate. And yet no real progress, no real work on issues that actually have an impact on us on a day-to-day basis and that do things to actually join us together. And so what the Tennessee Equality Project, so many others are trying to do is simply bring us to a place where we can work together, where we can collaborate, where we can engage in community to build towards something better for our communities and for our state.
Well, last year we had you on to address what some people referred to as the slate of hate, the annual block of bills designed to restrict the rights of LGBTQ+ Tennesseans. So let's start there. Is it just me, or are they just going so much harder this year?
Boy, oh boy. I remember hearing on a local news broadcast earlier this year that they really thought the focus was going to be solely on these immigration issues, solely on the sort of divisive work of the bills they're pushing forward against our refugee and asylum seeker neighbors. And yet, to your point, here we are. Just this last week alone, we had a baker's dozen bills that the Tennessee Equality Project was tracking in committee just Tuesday and Wednesday. And while we're glad that a lot of those were rolled, action was deferred on them for a week or 2 weeks, that means that they're still hanging out there, right there on the cusp of taking that next step that next step towards implementation.
Well, let's get into some of these bills. So the House has already passed HB 1473, which would undermine same-sex marriage. Can you explain to us how that would impact the lives of our neighbors?
Absolutely. And I believe that's the anti-Obergefell bill, as we conveniently call it. And as the sponsor of that bill would point out, this bill actually doesn't do anything. It is here to educate. It is here to clarify that the rulings of the Supreme Court in the Obergefell case don't apply to private citizens. Well, if that is the case, then my sole question in return is, why then? Why does this need to be legislation? And the only thing that I can think of is how this moves that discriminatory flag up the beach just a little bit more, so that when it comes time to take the next step of awful, they're that much further. They've made it that much easier to implement a policy of division, of this person gets this and these folks don't.
They've also advanced the Banning Bostock Act, which would bar state anti-discrimination laws from applying to LGBTQ plus individuals. Can they legally decide to ban a Supreme Court ruling?
You ask a fantastic question. And I think that part of our answer comes from the fact that the sponsor of this bill has requested that it be known as the, quote, Banning Bostock Act. Another legislator friend of mine once told me, you name bills, you give them titles like that to organize around. So the fact that this legislator is saying that what they want to organize around is banning a Supreme Court decision that prevents discrimination against community after community tells us all we really need to know. The specifics are awful. They say that the private businesses and individuals are not bound by the Bostock decision. This is the decision in June 2020 that barred discrimination based on affectional orientation, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and saying that the state's citizens, the state's businesses need not be bound by those. Well, to your point, Marie, that's a Supreme Court decision. We don't get to pick and choose among those things. And again, the purpose is, the rallying cry is overturning this decision. It is meant to get back in federal circuit court, in federal district courts, so that it can make a run, just like the anti-gender affirming care bills for those under the age of the majority back in 2023. It is there to make a run at the Supreme Court because they love them odds right now. And so any ways that they can run legislation that will divide us from each other, they're going for it.
Well, you said that these bills are named to grab attention, so there's no Pride Flag or Month Act, which is pretty self-explanatory. How is this different than what they tried to pass last year?
In some ways, I'd say it's even more concerning because it's really going after local governments, municipalities, and saying that they aren't allowed to speak in support, to demonstrate support for the people in their communities in the ways that they feel are most beneficial for their communities. We talked last year about how the Pride Festival and Pride Month is something that really draws people to Nashville. It is an event. People come and book hotel rooms. They spend money in our coffee shops and restaurants, right? It creates great community. That's the most important thing. But it is not negligible, the amount of money and foot traffic and attention that brings in a positive way to the city. And so our city has decided that that's an important thing to support. And legislation like this would challenge our ability to do just that. The other difference that I think is important to raise up here that the legislator bringing this forward has tried to gloss over. I was in committee about to give testimony on another bill when he was presenting this one. He really tried to gloss over questions that he was asked about. Well, it isn't just flags. It also says emblems here in the text. What does emblems mean? I've got a little pin here with a rainbow on it that was given to me by somebody who was saying that this was a healthcare pin. Who gets to decide whether the rainbow colors on my pen stand for pride matters or whether they stand for God's promise to us? Or, as Representative Salinas pointed out, how rainbows are used for those who have lost children during pregnancy, and talking about miracle babies that come after loss like that. Is that a pride symbol? And again, who gets to decide that? So not only does it work to divide us, but it also works to chill speech in any number of ways. It just really creates more questions and more problems then it helps create solutions for anybody.
My favorite place in Nashville to take friends from out of town is the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. It makes me feel so proud to be able to show off our city's country music roots. But y'all, it's not just a tourist attraction. Did you know that local kids always visit free at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum? Kids age 18 and under who are residents of Davidson and bordering counties, including Cheatham, Robertson, Rutherford, Sumner, Williamson, and Wilson, can take advantage of all the engaging and educational activities the museum has to offer this spring at no cost. Plus, they can bring 2 accompanying adults who get 25% off admission. I love the museum's Taylor Swift Education Center. They've got music, dance, art programs, and on Fridays this month, you can check out Irish step dancing, a musical instrument petting zoo, and plenty of other fun activities. Learn more and plan your visit at countrymusichall-of-fame.org/local-kids. Hey, did y'all miss the sold-out world premiere of Dolly Parton's Threads, My Songs in Symphony last year? Well, do I have great news for you. You have another chance to see it. March 19th through the 21st, this incredible concert returns to the Skirmerhorn Symphony Center, where the Nashville Symphony and guest vocalists will bring Dolly's biggest hits to life. We're talking Jolene, Coat of Many Colors, I Will Always Love You, all backed by a full orchestra. And Dolly herself will be there too on the big screen throughout the show, sharing the stories behind the songs that shaped her life and career. It's a stunning multimedia celebration of a living Tennessee legend. And let me tell you, you do not want to miss it this time. Dolly Parton's Threads, My Songs in Symphony with the Nashville Symphony, March 19th through the 21st at Skirmerhorn. Get tickets now at nashvillesymphony.org.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
The other massive headline in this year's session has been the collaboration between state Republicans and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller to create Immigration 2026, a slate of legislation targeting immigrants without legal status, something they are hoping becomes a model for the rest of the country. What was your first reaction when reporting came out about this back in January?
Most of all, I feel sadness. I feel fear and worry. We have seen just with things how they are, how our communities have been torn apart, scared down to their existential bones because of the threats that this type of policing, this type of criminalization of our neighbors, for the folks who live here among us, work among us, pay taxes among us. The state has found a way to collude with the federal government in trying to create legislation that, again, divides us amongst ourselves, renditions people off to places unknown. We just had a reporter taken off the streets who has been working in support of their community, who has been going through the legal process. Why would we want to partner with a system, with parties that want to make that easier to come by? What does that do for us? And more concerning, the question then becomes, what causes is it actually trying to forward? Who are they saying belongs? My dad was a minister at a church on the Big Island, And there were folks in that congregation who were detained in the Japanese American internment camps that we, as Americans, placed people in during World War II. And the memories, the scars of that time continued to haunt those folks decades after the fact. Those are the hurts that we're trying to implement against our neighbors now. That's not the Nashville, and that's certainly not the Tennessee that I know and that I and so many others are working for on a day-to-day basis. But the state has said, nah, we're going to go a different, more awfuler path.
They're also pursuing efforts to force public schools, hospitals, and universities to track the immigration status of the people they serve. What's the danger in that? And to your point about themes, do you think they would stop with just the immigrant community?
You really have put your finger on it. Just this last week on Wednesday, we saw that HB 793 was moving through the House Finance Ways and Means Subcommittee. It will create real harm. Not only was HB 793 trying to record the immigration status of children attending our schools, trying to better themselves, trying to build that life for themselves. That wasn't the only time on that agenda that they had bills before them about making lists. I was in that committee room as well for another bill that is now in its third year of attempts to cross the finish line, HB 754, which is this bill about assuring that folks who have received gender-affirming care that feel that they've maybe taken the wrong step want additional procedures or care that can help them continue on a path to feel at home as themselves. These folks are commonly known as quote-unquote detransitioners, but I describe it in that way because it's important to underscore that what they're receiving is ongoing gender-affirming care, right? They're still trying to feel at home in their own bodies. The bill requires providers, it requires insurers to create lists. Where have we heard that before? Of the visits, the conversations, the prescriptions, and then collect that data and send it on to the desks of the speakers of our House to hold it in the archives of this state, not for billing, but for inspection and interrogation. And if we look at how that list making becomes a tool for separation, we can see how even amended bills in the immigration space, like HB 793, are also being turned into tools for list making. And in this case, of the very children among us. And that one meeting really demonstrated how they're trying to do that across multiple spaces to multiple communities.
We are always talking lawsuits, not laws, here on CityCast Nashville. And we just saw Metro Council members successfully force a settlement with the state over last year's attempt to criminalize voting for sanctuary policies as legislators. Will that change the Tennessee GOP's tendency to pass bills first and check the Constitution later?
No, they seem happy creating lawsuits. That seems to be their MO. We already brought up a perfect example of this. We have a couple, right? We have the Andy Obergefell bill, which is a thumbing of the state's nose at the Supreme Court decision of 2015 on marriage equality. We have the quote unquote banning Bostock Act, right? Which is yet another thumbing of the nose and quite intentional. Like, hey, look over here. We're banning Bostock. Come on, get us so that you can take us into court. We want to be sued. I can't see that there's any other purpose to that bill besides that very specific thing. They're not only not going the way of actually creating legislation that's legal, what a concept, but actually going out of their way to create policy, to create law that is patently against the decisions of this land, the legal decisions of this land, AKA they illegal, so that they can get in the courts and try to fight for their illegality to become the law of the land. I haven't watched Stranger Things, so I don't know if this reference is really right. But if that ain't a sign that we're in the upside down, I don't know what is, right? The illegal is legal. Bad is good. Your neighbors are not your neighbors. And then to be really dark for a second, and rendition is freedom. That's the type of doublespeak and duplicitous moral argument that folks are trying to make to forward this type of awful legislation. But you know and I know that the real ethic, the real moral of our communities is one of belonging. And that's what so many folks are working towards. The Remix Way, Tennessee Equality Project, the teachers groups that are up there fighting against this stuff. So many folks understand, for whatever reason, our supermajority legislature has decided to abdicate entirely, that community is belonging. And growth and strength in our state comes from creating communities of belonging. And while we may face tough odds up there, I will also say that it is a space in which we get to see so many folks allied in that work that even on its most draining days, you can look to your left or look to your right and say, there's another person trying to work towards the same thing.
Another bill that's grabbing headlines came from Senator Mark Pody, who represents Wilson County and a little bit of Davidson County. He brought an amendment that would potentially charge anyone who gets an abortion with homicide, for which they could face the death penalty. According to the Tennessean, Pody is wanting to see what the House will do before he tries to run it in the Senate. But House Speaker Cameron Sexton has already said he doesn't think the bill is fair. This bill has made national news. I've seen so many scary posts about it, even from my friends who just keep reposting it online about, oh, look what Tennessee's doing right now. Can we talk a little bit about panic and fear during the session and how to manage those emotions?
Boy, in the face of something like that, bills that threaten our very existence, it's hard to find that calm center. But I will say, most broadly and most importantly, a continuation of what I was hinting on before. When we step forward, there are people, there is community that we can't see from where we are standing back here. They're just out of our range of view, right? But when we make that step forward, when we step out and speak up, there are so many folks waiting there who have been doing the work, whose shoulder that we can rest our head on, and because they've been doing the work for a while, whose heads they can rest on our shoulders. And there is energy and intentionality and a pushing back of hopelessness that comes from stepping in to what seem like hopeless spaces. And the threats against us are real. Those threats are intended to make us cower and to stay away from such spaces. But in stepping forward, I just feel certain, and I have experienced how that actually adds life, adds purpose, adds energy to my days and what I've seen in the lives of so many others as well.
I've spent some time down at the Capitol over the years, but you're there constantly when the legislature is in session. So what do you think about the Capitol Hill Protection Zone bill that the House passed at the end of February, which would then beef up the presence of law enforcement down there?
Who is being protected from whom and how? What's sad is that there hasn't been more voice and action against that legislation. I will admit, I've had to focus on this awful slate of stuff that they're pushing against the LGBTQIA plus community right now, and haven't given that bill the type of voice against that it deserves. To me, it's not even so much about the specifics, but it's raising this question about safety and speech What does safety look like? Who is it pointing the finger at to try to distance ourselves from each other? That person is the threat, so we must make sure they are outside the safety zone. Who makes those decisions? How are they made? Problem after problem after problem that bills like that create, and even more policing towards dubious safety ends that, again, don't do the work of actually building us up and connecting us.
Well, there's also a bill that would create a new legal pathway to sue paid protesters. This is a new bill. Darren, have you ever been paid to protest anything?
I have not. I feel strongly about a lot of the stuff that happens down there, and that's a good place to speak it. So what do you know? I happen to go down to the places where the decisions are being made to say a thing about a thing. That seems pretty common sense to me.
Well, let's end on a positive note. Are there any proposed bills that you hope will pass?
Representative Salinas is really trying to run some fantastic legislation this term that serves to support our communities that are under attack in so many other ways. Representatives Bain, Senators Campbell, and Oliver have been really intentional in trying to forward bills that go to the type of work that I've been describing throughout this conversation of building up our communities. Heck, just rebuilding our roads. That would be nice, right? To have a good funding source for that. But they've been really intentional in trying to do those things. The challenge, of course, is do they even get through committee a lot of times, right? I mean, and if they are given a yes vote in committee, one almost has to beg the question of why, because even at the subcommittee level, the numbers are so skewed that they don't have to even attend to a bill. Representative Pearson brought forward a bill to extend bereavement leave for parents who've lost children. And the question was called within nanoseconds, and a vote of nay was placed on the bill all within 90 seconds. That bill is amazing. Speaking as a bereavement counselor, as if somebody who supports people who are grieving, I was so glad to see the type of intentionality around that issue. And they wouldn't even give it the time of day. So there are lots of legislators trying to do really positive work, and a lot of it isn't even given a chance, which I will say, again, is another reason to keep on showing up down there so that they know that they aren't alone in trying to make these efforts. There is a lot of shame comments to the committee when they voted that quickly, and the good Representative Pearson was being very diplomatic about it and saying, thank you, it's all right. But it's a tough road ahead of them that makes it all the more incumbent upon us to be present and to push back against all the awful by which they're surrounded.
Well, I wish we had more time to talk more about this, but I think just overall, the theme has obviously been divisiveness, fear-mongering, but you've given us some hope. So I appreciate that, and I hope people do listen and show up.
It may seem bleak at times. It is bleak and hard and scary a lot of the time. But the way that we keep on moving towards better, the ways that we keep on moving towards how we create the communities of thriving and flourishing that we want for ourselves, are to keep our eyes on those horizon goals, to make sure that we've got a community, a collaborative collection of folks on either side of us, and we're linked arms, and that regardless of what is in our path in front of us, that our eyes don't get short-sighted to the immediate challenge, but stay focused on the horizon goals, and that we do the work that we need to overcome the challenges that we faced in the moment, but that those challenges do nothing to change the horizon towards which we're trying to move ourselves and the rest of our state. And I know with the type of work that you're doing, that I'm trying to do, and that so many others are trying to do, we are going to make progress towards those, come hell or high water.
I appreciate you being here, as always. Thank you.
Likewise. Amen and amen.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Nashville neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our CityCast Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!